I just learnt that my parents kidnapped me when I was a baby. Part 1. Before I tell you about the present, I ought to tell you about the past. You see, this horrible information has lent weight to what was already one of the most terrifying events from my childhood. My entire life, I've felt keenly observed. Some claim there to be no scientific basis for that sensation, the feeling of a gaze, or many gazes, touching one's skin. They claim it to be an illusion. As a child, I used to tell myself this, whenever I felt eyes upon me. But now I know better. In year 9, Miss Black arrived at our school and became, for only one lesson, the new religious education teacher. She spent 45 minutes mystified by me. That wasn't in my head, my friends commented as much. Her eyes lingered on my face, even when I wasn't answering a question. It made me squirm. "Are you a Christian?" one girl asked the teacher. "Religious persecution is part of the human condition, so I keep my beliefs close to my chest," Miss Black replied, gaze locked on me, not the inquirer. "Ripe. What did you say, miss?" asked another of my classmates. The teacher ignored him and continued with the lesson, but we all heard that out-of-place word. My friends repeated it mercilessly for the rest of the day. They joshed me with smooching noises and puckered lips, all while refusing to take their own eyes off me, emulating my supposed admirer. I am grateful for that, however. Grateful for their steadfast mockery. Grateful that they clung to my side adoringly as we walked to the buses at the end of the school day. You see, if my friends hadn't been there to scream for help when Miss Black attempted to pack me into her rusted Kia, perhaps Mr. Alton wouldn't have rushed forwards in time. Perhaps I never would have been seen again. For many years, I woke in a sweat whenever recalling the many elements of that traumatic ordeal, which culminated in Mr. Alton shoving Miss Black to the asphalt and rescuing me from the back seat. I remember Miss Black's firm fingers clamping around the shoulder pads of my school blazer. I remember the putrid aroma of onions, cheese, and spices, meals woven into the leather chairs of her car. I remember the stained pillow and the scratchy blanket, suggesting that she'd been living in there. I shuddered whenever I imagined what that would-be abductor had in store for me. But I may not have been frightened enough. Miss Black was arrested, and my parents moved us to the other side of the country. However, even with that dangerous woman locked away, my fear of being watched only worsened. A doctor prescribed antidepressants to help with my phobia of being watched. Sure, those pills helped to dull the fear, helped to dull all of my emotions, rendering me a numb adolescent, near oblivious to the world around me. But they were still there. The eyes of the watchers. I just cared significantly less about them. Until this weekend. I came home from university to help Dad with some spring cleaning, as he'd been complaining about clutter in the house, though it ended up being a matter of spring reshuffling, as things were simply being moved into the loft until my parents had the mental energy to decide what to do with them. My father was quite particular about the tidying process, repeatedly telling me to stick to my side. I'd never been allowed in the attic as a child, and I hardly seemed welcome there as an adult, but Mom had apparently forced him to ask me for help. His back was playing up, so he'd been struggling to carry boxes on his own. Anyhow, I insisted that I would follow Dad's rules, which made him soften a little. He conceded that I'd never disobeyed him before, so he'd trust me. And then came the second most frightening situation of my young life. Whilst we were moving clutter into the loft, my father clutched his chest with fingers bent angularly. "Dad?" I gasped. Most oddly of all, my father, legs buckling, seemed concerned only with the cardboard boxes at the side of the room. He tried to shove one in particular off the top of the stack, but both the box tower and his brittle body came tumbling down to the floorboards. I dropped to my knees beside him, then twisted my head to the open attic door. "Mom! Help!" A few seconds later, my mother, calling out for an explanation, came flying up the attic ladder. She wailed in horror at the sight of her husband lying half-conscious on the attic floor. Mom hurriedly rang 999, then beckoned me towards her. "Come on, Charlie. Get out of the attic." I frowned, eyeing Dad below me. What? One of us needs to stay with him. Charlie, I won't tell you, Mum began, then a voice came from her phone, and she started to descend the ladder. Yes, it's my husband. He's. As she talked to the operator, I found myself focusing on something other than the man lying at my knees, teetering on the precipice of a cardiac arrest. Rather, I was focusing on my parents' odd behavior. Dad had knocked the boxes over intentionally. Mum hadn't wanted me to stay in the attic. Something was up. Charlie, Dad wheezed after I'd climbed to my feet and walked towards the toppled box, with a sealed lid, that he'd been trying to hide. I held up a hand. Don't move. Mum's calling an ambulance. Don't, he croaked, exerting whatever strength he had left. But every protest only motivated me further. I knelt before the unlabeled box, held together with sellotape robbed of adhesiveness by time, then I tore the flaps open with ease. Inside were discolored sheets of paper, coated in orange, mildew, mold, and ink. The sheets were made of fibers that felt like painful bristles to the touch, as if they might draw blood, or burrow beneath my flesh. A horrifyingly inexplicable sensation that, now, I do not believe to have been imaginary. Those handwritten documents told a story that sickened me. Adam Darren. October 2, 2005. Blessed be. 11 pounds. Blessed be. Adam smiles for the crescent moon. He is ripe for harvest. Blessed be. He shall end the world of men. He shall lead the chosen few. Blessed be. The poetic ramblings meant little to me, but the date of birth certainly didn't. The 10th of February, 2005. My birthday. My father painfully pleaded, don't touch them. Please. I found an old Polaroid at the bottom of the box, displaying dozens of people standing in a field on a sunny day, a timid moon hung above, half hidden by the blue of the sky. There was nothing immediately odd about the people. They wore ordinary clothes. Denims and cottons. At the front, a blonde-haired couple held a blue bundle between them, a towel cushioning a newborn baby, his cherub face peeking out. And a few feet to the side of them, wearing smiles tinged with falseness and fear, were two adults that caught my eye, 20 years younger, but instantly recognizable. Mum and Dad. Stop touching them, Charlie, Dad begged, and I turned to see him reaching towards me painfully. They'll have found us by now. The ambulance is on its way. Mum called as she hurried back up the attic ladder, and when she saw the relics in my hands, her eyes widened. In a demanding tone, I asked her, what are these? You touched them, she whispered, eyes flitting to the attic window fearfully. Who is this child? I growled, jabbing at the picture. Why are you and Dad in this picture? We should have burnt that box, Mum whimpered as she walked over to me. Maybe it's not too late. No. Dad weakly protested, choking on the word. Mum knelt beside him and took his hand. The operator said we need to get you into a comfortable. Don't destroy any of it, Dad pleaded, ignoring his wife's pleas. That'll only make it worse. We have to run. We have to. Are these my real parents? I interrupted, cheeks red with rage, pointing at the baby in the photo. Am I Adam? My mum averted my gaze, answering me without saying a word. As my fingers gripped the Polaroid's plastic coating, I heard voices pouring out of the picture. Jubilant voices. Though nothing about their joy put me at ease, it haunted me. Haunted me because it felt as if I were bound to a force, both internal and external, unlike any earthly thing I have ever experienced. Horrified by this sensation, I dropped the contents of the box, and my parents let out a collective sigh of relief. But then my free-willed feet carried the rest of my body over to the attic window. Standing at the other side of the road was a man in a parka. Just a man. An ordinary man. But he was eyeballing me. Looking straight up at the window. He mouthed a word at me. I don't know how to read lips, but I'm certain of what he said. Ripe. He began to sprint towards our front door. A shoe sole pummeled against the front door 2 floors below, and my questions no longer mattered. All that mattered was the very primitive and pressing urge in my head to escape, to survive. And, upon hearing the sound of the intruder, my parents shared a knowing look, before screaming in unison, "Run!" Terrified beyond words, I slid down the ladder, leaving my sobbing mother and weak father behind. I scurried into my old bedroom, tuning out the sound of wood tearing from hinges downstairs. Feet pounded across the lobby. I tore open the bedroom window and eyed the branch of the oak tree a couple of feet away. As the stranger came upstairs and my heart pounded against my rib cage, I took a deep breath. Then, for the first time since my reckless youth, I jumped. A cry of frustration came from behind me as I clumsily caught the thick branch like a monkey bar. After scaling down the tree, I looked up in terror to see that man standing in the window, fingers clutching the edge of the frame. He had been a moment from snatching me. I fled as an ambulance siren filled the street. For the past day, I've been hopping from bus to bus. I haven't slept. I'm too afraid to contact my parents. But now that I've put some distance between myself and that horrifying photograph, which seemed to call out to a frightful force I do not understand, I'm starting to see a little more clearly. Yesterday, I needed only to escape. Now, I need answers. Who am I? And who are the people watching me?